Hello everyone, I hope you're all safe and well. Thanks for joining me for part 2 of this So Many Legs unboxing video. I've had to split it down into 2 parts because the second part ran a little bit longer than I expected. So you've seen everything that's arrived. Everything arrived all safe and sound. Really happy with the packaging from So Many Legs and for what they actually sent. And now we're going to go through and we're going to do the housing and go into some specifics about the species that they've sent me and some care requirements and that sort of stuff. I'm not going to go through housing the spiderlings. You've seen me house the spiderlings before. However, I am going to show you some of the small differences between setting up wandering spiders, true spiders, and setting up tarantulas. So without further ado, let's get cracking. Okay, so I mentioned earlier on that there are some slight differences in how you set up true spiders in comparison to tarantulas. For the most part, they're actually the same. You still need to take into consideration things like the type of substrate you're going to use, the size of pot that you need, enclosure that you need, whether they're arboreal, terrestrial, fossorial, and that sort of stuff. The main difference, especially with wandering spiders, is that you need to think about space. So even though these are relatively small slings, I'm going to be putting them into a slightly larger pot, and the reason for that is as close to nature as possible for these guys. They are, unlike tarantulas, not solely ambush predators. These guys will actually actively hunt for food. So they generally won't just make a hide or a burrow or whatever and stay there and wait for food to wander past like most species of tarantula do. These guys actually actively go out and hunt for food. So they do need a little bit more space and a little bit more freedom to roam. So we use a slightly larger enclosure for them, but we still need to take into consideration all of the normal factors, things like ventilation, temperature, humidity, and that sort of stuff. Okay, so simple substrata mix that I use, which is a combination of a small amount of peat-based topsoil, some plain topsoil, which is a little bit sandy and loamy, and then we've got a bit of coir mixed in with that as well. The reason I do this is I tend to find that this is a suitable substrata for pretty much everything across the board. You can adjust your mixes a little bit depending on what you're putting it in with, but generally it will create a nice ground covering for arboreal species. If you've got terrestrial species, you can use it in there to have a slightly more sort of depth of substrata to give them something to sort of snuffle around in, and then if you're using burrowing species, fossorial species, you can fill it up quite deep, you can compact it down, and it's really good for constructing nice deep stable burrows. So that's the combination of substrata that I use, and all we're going to be doing is simply adding a small amount of this to the bottom of the enclosure. Again, as I say, semi-arboreal species, so we're not going to go for really deep substrata. Once that's packed down, all we're simply going to do then, this is the other side of it, because this is a tropical species, come from jungle areas like Belize. I've had an opportunity to see these actually out in the wild in Belize. They're amazing, but it is a very humid place, so we do need some higher humidity. So we've got very small cross ventilation holes on there, a few ventilation holes in the lid, but to make sure that we're staying on top of mold growth and that sort of stuff, I always add a little bit of bioactive substrata to my setups. So we're going to have some springtails and other bits and bobs in there that we'll mix in with it. Perfect. All we're going to do then is find something suitable for them to climb on. Add a little bit of moss for decor, which is one of the things I always do, and then just give it a quick spritz so everything's nice and damp. There we go, and that is a really simple, basic arboreal setup, slightly larger than it needs to than you would for your average spiderling for a wandering spider. Okay, so now we've got that set up, we've got it inside a secondary pot there, we've got a catch cup on hand, and now we're going to look at getting it into its new enclosure. So let's have a look there and see what we've got. Now I've already had a look at these, made sure they're all okay. So now we're just going to get ready to take one out and put it into its new enclosure. So let's have a look first to see where these guys are and what they're doing. Okay, so there he is there, tiny little fella. You can probably just about see him in there, and it looks like yeah, there we go, he's in there. So what we'll do, because they are very quick, we'll take this out like that, we'll pop him in there, and we'll see if we can get him to come out and stay. Oh, this guy's molted, so there's a fresh molt in the bottom of here, so we need to be very careful with this guy, make sure that he's alright. So there we go. Right. So that's it, you go on there. Oh, there we go. Very quick, these little guys. And they jump, seemingly. I'll be honest, I've never seen them jump before. So I've done it again. He's absolutely adamant. He is not staying in there. Oh, bless him. Really doesn't want to play the game. That's it. Cheeky little shrimp. There. Now he's in there. Okay, so here we are. All 8 new spiders set up into the new enclosures. So we've got the 5 wandering spiders in the 5 larger enclosures, and then we've got the 3 smaller slings that came with the mug of tea. So we'll have a talk about what we've done and a little bit about each individual species. So first up, we've got the Cereopagopus von Worthy. Common name is a bit all over the place with this one. Its common name is Vietnamese earth tiger, but the Vietnamese earth tiger common name actually applies to a few different species, so I don't like common names. I'd rather stick with the proper scientific names. So Cereopagopus von Worthy comes from quite a lot of Southeast Asia, but predominantly found in Vietnam, which is why it's been given the name Vietnamese earth tiger. They are a burrowing species. They like nice humid conditions and temperatures of around about 26 to 28 degrees. As you can see, what we've done with there is we've given it some really nice deep substrata so it can burrow. There's a little bit of moss in there for additional humidity, and we've given that a spray down. Now, with the humidity side of life, you need to make sure you've got some good cross ventilation. Otherwise, there's the chance that you could develop a bit of mold and that sort of stuff in the enclosures. And what I like to do with these is to chuck in a little bit of, as you've seen in my previous videos, chuck in a little bit of bioactive substrate that's got springtails and isopods in, which act as natural cleaners, deter the growth of mold and that sort of stuff, and eat any leftover waste that would also encourage mold growth. So that's all in there ready to go. That will live in there quite happily for a while until it's sort of a little bit bigger. As you can see there, it's fairly small, probably about 2 centimeters leg span, but obviously it will start to grow. It'll be in there for a little while, and then we'll think about moving it into a larger enclosure that's got nice deep humid substrata that it can burrow into. And as much as they're a fantastic species, they look amazing. One of the downsides for a lot of people with Cereopagopus, or what used to be the Haplopelma genus, is they do tend to be pet holes, so they can burrow down. You won't very often see them. The only reason you know they're still around is because the food that you put in there for them disappears off, and every now and again they chuck a molt out of the hole, and you know that they've molted and that sort of stuff. But every now and again you catch them out and about, and it's definitely worthwhile because they're absolutely beautiful looking spiders. So that's the Cereopagopus von Werthy, the Vietnamese earth tiger. Next we've got the Togo starburst. So this is an African species, otherwise known as the ornamental baboon, so Heteroscoda maculata. You'll be able to see just up there, nice tiny little thing. These are an arboreal species, although as slings they will tend to stay quite low, create almost upright burrows constructed of web and substrate. So what we've done in there, we've put a little bit of lollipop stick in for it to climb on, give it an arboreal setup. Not too much substrate, there's enough in there it can use some of it to stick into its web and create a little tunnel, which it will do. And then we've got some sphagnum moss in there just to add a little bit of humidity. Now they don't require huge amounts of humidity, this species, coming mostly from Togo and Ghana, places like that. So yeah, this is one where you don't need to spray it down too often. It will get a majority of the fluids that it needs from the food that it eats, but it's always nice to give it a spray every once in a while, because there are wet seasons in Africa and they do experience rainfall and that sort of stuff, so it does sort of simulate a little bit more of its natural environment. Again, sort of kept between 24-28 degrees. Quite happy and quite comfortable at the lower end of that, so no dramas at all with that in terms of temperature. And again, what we've done with there is make sure we've got some good cross ventilation, make sure we've got some ventilation holes in the lid, and this will stay in here for probably another two molts, and then we'll move it on into a bigger enclosure. Okay, finally for the mug of tea slings, we've got, not that you'll be able to see him very well, is this little guy here, which is the Chilobrachys Kraken, or Krashan, however you want to say it. Can't remember what the common name for these are. Dark earth tiger, I believe, which is a fairly sort of generic name. But again, come from Southeast Asia. Yeah, absolutely fantastic species, very defensive. These are opportunistic burrowers, and they will either utilize burrows, they will dig, but they also create quite a lot of web, so they make use of whatever's around them. So I've given this one a decent amount of substrata so it can burrow if it wants to. It's got some sphagnum moss in there to assist with humidity, because again, being from Southeast Asia, they are sort of more tropical climes, so it does like a little bit more humidity. So we've got the sphagnum moss in there, and also it'll have something it can attach some web to and that sort of stuff if it wants to create, you know, some crazy webbing, as the Chilobrachys genus sometimes does like to do. So there's that little guy there. These are quite a defensive, very fast species. Wouldn't call them fantastic beginner species, but you know, for intermediate hobbyists and stuff like that, definitely personality wise these guys are fantastic. So one of my favourite genus from Southeast Asia, that's the Chilobrachys species Kraken. And then finally, we spoke a little bit about it earlier on, we've got the tiger wandering spider, the Cupienia soleil. Fantastic species, Central American, come from places in Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, those areas. So again, they need to have sort of almost tropical rainforesty type setups. So that's what we've done with this. We've given it a decent amount of substrata in the bottom. It will not burrow. it will just wander around there, climb around, look for food and that sort of stuff. But you know, we've given it a decent amount of substrata in there that will help to maintain humidity, sphagnum moss in there, and something for it to climb on. As I said before, we need to make sure that these guys have a little bit more space, because unlike tarantulas, they're not opportunistic feeders and opportunistic ambush predators. These guys do wander around in search of prey, they do hunt. They will take your vantage point on high ground and they will watch for prey, and they will actively go and hunt it down. So plenty of space in there for it to wander around, and also plenty of space for it to grow. These guys are very, very fast. They do have medically significant venom. In fact, there's a lot of research being done into the venom for these guys at the moment, in terms of what its medical applications are and that sort of stuff. But it is a very powerful neurotoxin. Being a cousin of the Brazilian wandering spider, it's not difficult to believe that they could pack a punch if you took a bite from one of these. Again, absolutely beautiful species, look fantastic as adults. They are sexually dimorphic, which means the males and females do look different. Males tend to be a more subdued brown colour. Females have much more brighter coloration and more vivid, dark and light banding and that sort of stuff. So yeah, a quick Google search for these will show you all the pictures and that sort of stuff, so you can tell the difference between them. But they are a fantastic species if you're into your true spiders and that sort of stuff, without the need for a DWA license and that sort of thing. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. One of my favourite of the wandering spider species. And yeah, so really looking forward to seeing how these 5 guys get on, looking to see if we've got males, females, that sort of stuff, and then hopefully potentially doing some breeding projects with them later on. So yeah, that's the Cupienius soleil, the tiger wandering spider. As always, thanks for watching. Feel free to leave me a comment, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Stay safe.